All right. All right, now we're recording and we're live with one of my favorite people, Sassy Sassoon of Zebras Unite. Hey, thanks for this conversation.
Yeah, absolutely. It's an absolute pleasure to be here. As a lifelong co-opper, I'm always down to talk shop.
Of course, that's great. Well, we have a few questions we would love to get your thoughts on, but I want to start for the couple of newbies that might be showing up on this call. Who is Sassy? Give us a brief flyover of your background and whatever you'd like to highlight about that.
Yeah. Again, Kate or Sassy, whichever y'all prefer. All the pronouns are good for me. And I, the hat that I most strongly wear here that brought me here is in the words of Mara Zepeda, one of the founders of Zebras Unite, I'm a co-op native. I grew up in various flavors of housing and daycare and worker cooperative of various kinds, artist cooperatives as well. And so by the time I got to, having to leave college after living and working in student cooperatives, and graduating into what we then thought was the greatest recession in the new millennia. I, very rapidly saw two things. One, I had a deep need to support myself, and also I had a deep need to stay active. My parents raised me as an American citizen in that if you love something, you better show up to critique it and make it better. So a lot of problems in this country, and so it's my job to help fix them. And so I had a deep need for that, and also a need to pay rent. And saw a deep need, not just inside the cooperative community, but also in the larger, society writ large of support and help for coming together around difficult conversations and processes that in the co-owning and co-governance space. And I have a particular talent and love of holding space for really hard conversations that are complicated and involve multiple parties of ownership and involve surfacing and acknowledging past harms and, giant social inequalities that show up in the spaces between people. And so I just like doing that. Did it some more. I remember when I founded my business in 2008, Sassy Facilitation, which helps support co-op communication on various fronts. My main tagline for the first few years was, do you need someone who actually loves long and contentious board meetings to facilitate one for you? I'm here for you, because that's not everybody's truth. And so that's really what brings me to the work. And I have traveled around various roles and various incarnations of that work. Currently, I am doing that through supporting the membership circle and leading that at Zebras Unite Cooperative. But my main through line is, how do we show up and own and govern things together better so that we may uplift ourselves and our society at the same time?
Very good, very good. Gotcha. All right. What were, in your many different work experiences, you've done a lot of interesting things. Have there been a couple of light bulb moments that kind of put you on the path for the particular work that you're doing right now? Anything come to mind?
Oh, yeah. Well, I'll share the genesis of my company as a really big one. And then I kind of the path that I've walked to continue gaining and deepening that expertise and meeting needs along the way. So I started my company because the members of the Berkeley Student Cooperative, the currently largest by member volume student housing cooperative in the United States or North America. So it's about 1,300 members. The Ann Arbor one is older, but this one is larger. And there was a deep need there was one house in particular that was facing potential closure. There was real, literal life or death stakes that was happening because there had been a culture fail in that home to the degree that there had been multiple overdoses and deaths in that house. And so they were dealing with, high level, literal life or death and legal and existential threats to the cooperative, as well as the community and some of its members in that particular house. And so the staff of the organization, in service to the board's needs, asked me to come on as a community facilitator because I had lived in that house and I had also been a part of that community. And I learned two very important things during that process. One is that it is almost impossible to do your job as a facilitator if you do not have the buy-in and the perceived neutrality on the part of everybody. The current members of that house perceived me as an outsider. The current members of the university and law enforcement community saw me as a partner, but that mismatch prevented me from able to be doing good work. And the second thing that I learned is that there is a real unsung benefit to all of the kind of student cooperative organizations or young worker cooperatives that exist, to all the co-ops that exist out there that are essentially like young and chaotic, but they train people in how to actually be good citizens.
Very good.
As well as good co-opers, because the board, the board members of that organization got some really deep experience at governing it, at the time in $2008, $23 million organization running 20 properties, 1,300 members. People really got a boot camp in understanding what it is to compromise at scale. And to try and do that work growing forward. So things that I learned there as a young entrepreneur was, one, the work is incredibly important and worth doing, and there are benefits in how that sector is currently governed that need to be sung and uplifted because they cost, but we're not actually identifying them. And two, that perceived neutrality is crucial to being able to do the work as a facilitator.
Yeah, great point. I love that. A friend of mine said, being a little co-op skeptical, he said, don't you think co-ops are really just a form of community organizing? Aren't they better understood as a form of community? And you're saying, yes, and don't forget there's schools of citizenship.
Yes, absolutely.
That's
it is
great.
a form of community organizing that is more deep because it includes ownership, and absolutely a school of citizenship. And there's actually a couple studies that have been done to that effect. If you've been a member of a housing co-op, you are more likely to be more civically engaged.
Yeah, very good, very good. All right. And this wonderful story, it is a wonderful story of zebras, although I have learned to say zebras.
But we're a both and kind of group, but
That's
we
right.
lean towards zebras if we can.
What is a zebra? What is a zebra? What is that about? Tell us about the movement called Zebras Unite.
So I'm newer to the movement. I've been in co-ops a lot longer, and Zebras Unite backed their way into being a cooperative following
that's right.
values, right? So they really, Zebras Unite is an amazing, amazing idea, which is basically 4 brilliant women coming together to use and lean on their learned and labored experience to articulate a really deep foundational critique to venture capital funded entrepreneurialism culture as it currently is articulated, right? The kind of cultural obsession that we seem to be going through in this moment around Silicon Valley normed tech startups or startup entrepreneurialism in general. Just a really deep critique of how that is not only not serving most entrepreneurs on the ground, but also the incentives and the ways that they are aligned by your average norm of venture capital funding are in fact materially contributing to the degradation of civil society. In the opposite of what we just spoke of. And so that's really the core thesis of Zebras Unite. And so the zebras, folks who identify as zebras, came together to really articulate, after being sparked by the article, Zebras Fix What Unicorns Break.
Wonderful manifestos, yes.
And the manifestos that regularly get posted really came together and said, well, okay, well, now that we have sparked this idea, what's the solution set we want to bring? And the solution is threefold. Actually mobilizing new forms of capital toward entrepreneurs, building a community of like-minded entrepreneurs to actually share with each other, share and lean on each other. And then third, of course, mobilizing culture shift. So not just working internally, but working on paradigm shift as a whole by proving new solutions and then walking them outward and then operating internally in new ways and then sharing those lessons as well.
Yeah, you're the director of co-op membership. So what is that like? What do you do when you do that?
Yeah, so the general thing that so we have organized our labor of administering the family of companies that does what Zebras Unite can do in the world. So we're the new form of co-op, the multi-stakeholder co-op model that got spun up in Colorado, which I encourage people to check out. We're an LCA as well as an American-based nonprofit or a 501c3. So we have one big pool of labor that administers those companies and the other projects we're working on. I am the lead of one of the circles of that big pool of labor, because we organize ourselves internally as somewhat sociocratically. If you know about sociocracy or holacracy, we borrow from a bunch of other flavors of co-governance, but that's how we organize our labor most intelligibly. And it's up on our website. You can share or you can take a look at more. If you are a member, if you're not a member, more outward facing information coming soon.
All right.
And what I do mostly is I try and help the organization take our idea of being a cooperative and make it true. right? And so the co-op form was arrived at because the founders understood that if they wanted to make meaningful change, they needed to actually put ownership in the hands of the people creating the value. And so that was the thesis underneath having a co-op. That said, literally no one in the crew when I arrived last year had run a co-op before.
Oh, well, yep.
And so I brought in both some much needed expertise on how to operate cooperatively and how to try and build a membership and articulate, the point of being a co-op is that the people who are needing or are impacted by the thesis are the ones who are owning and governing around that thesis. So there's a value exchange, right? It's I show up for this thing, I put in my share of the thing and I get a value back, right? That's the basic premise of cooperative organizing of any fashion. And so my job right now is to keep deeply articulating what is the value exchange and why should members be showing up for this and what does that look like, and then what are we asking of members to show up besides dues and buy-in, and then what are we offering members back that we are collectively getting. And I'd say that the biggest thing I'm doing right now is just acknowledging that we are still building. And the beauty of that is that members really get to shape the co-op in the image that they show up and need it to be shaped in. And our members are entrepreneurs and small companies and some larger companies that are trying to build as Zebra companies. The challenge of that is that it's not well built yet because we have to build it. So,
but it's going like great guns. It's 8,000 members. Are you close to that?
So we have 8,000 folks in our community.
In the community, okay.
Right. So folks who've actually bought in, I think we have we're hitting around, we're about 200 members right now.
Oh, great. Okay.
And we have, again, members are companies. So we have more humans than that in the room. But the companies or individuals are the actual member. So
wonderful.
We're trying to grow more like the hardwood than like the bamboo.
And let's remind everybody, this is a global network in like 20 cities or something worldwide. And
so yeah, there are a lot of chapters. I think we are just about 30 chapters now. And we are re-articulating with the chapter leadership community what exactly the chapter program is, because it actually predates the company. There were folks who were just inspired in 2017 at the DazzleCon event that was held. To just wanted to take it home, wanted to go and start working. And so we spun up an idea of being in chapter federation and then started a company. And so we're revamping and re-articulating what all these different places of action are. But the thing that is very strong is, there's zebras all over the world, creating community locally, creating ecosystem change locally, and then also just buying into the global co-op, because no matter where you are, you can own a share. And you can use it to vote for the board of directors, you can use it to vote on proposals, etc. So it is, while we are legally articulated in the US, we are global in our membership.
Wow, yeah, it's great, it's great. Anyone watching this video would not be surprised to learn that Kate Sassoon has a personal business around facilitation. And all the secrets and magic and special tricks and all the rest of it. They might even know that you have partly a degree in theater. I'm just thinking that, okay, this kind of comes out and leaks out a little bit. Anyway, tell us about your business. When do you get called in? How do you find that work? Experience it.
Fabulous question as we wind toward our close. So I do have a degree in theater. I almost went to New York and did musical theater, but I decided that I would be better served and serving elsewhere. I also have a degree in science. So I have a degree in ecosystem sciences.
Great.
Because I'm all about that both and I'd say that that's actually probably the thing that I get called in most to do is to answer and support on really deeply both and questions. It seems to come in seasons, and those of you who are also business owners, especially service providers, will probably resonate with this. It seems that there are seasons of what people need, sometimes tied to years, sometimes tied to the where we are in the arc of our current social dialogue on things. Most in the last 5 years, I'd say, I get called in for basically 3 types of work. My favorite by far is, we understand that this is a challenging thing to co-own and co-govern an entity together, and we would like to set ourselves up for success by proactively writing agreements. That's my favorite. It's not the most common one, but it is my favorite. And there are some groups that do this, and I give them big gold stars. The second one is we are facing some sort of interpersonal conflict that is having an impact on a larger group. So maybe 2 members or a small group of members of an existing company or business or land-owned enterprise of some form are having an interpersonal relationship issue that is impacting the larger group. And so I do a form of mediation where we work at both those levels. And I get called in for that a lot, and I do that work less because it's extremely labor intensive.
Yeah.
The most common thing I get called in for is when some larger aspect of the organization is on fire.
Oh, wow.
And often that is, sometimes it's an interpersonal conflict that is blown up. Sometimes it's a deep need for proactive training. Sometimes it's a complete renegotiation of what the company is because the co-opers or the members that formed it are no longer the members running it, and the needs have shifted, but the documentation has not. Or that in the case of a current client I have, they're literally dealing with multi-generational shift. They've been around long enough that they're needing to deal with not just the first founder member crew turning over, but the third and fourth generation turning over, and dealing with life phase problems.
Wow.
You know, we have this silver tsunami happening in the US that's, you know, people aging out of businesses, retiring and entering their end of life phase, and their businesses, their homes, their companies, their community enterprises needing a way to be passed on. And sometimes even, you know, moving from a sole-owned thing to a co-owned thing is one solution, but even sometimes when you have a co-owned thing, actually surviving that transition is non-trivial. And sometimes you just need some help.
Yeah, indeed. It's an earthquake. It's what it is.
And sometimes you just need someone to come in and hold space and hold a structure for you so that you can show up as your whole self and as your deeply flawed individual and get some ideas that aren't in the room. I'd say that's my biggest contribution through SASE facilitation is I collect experiences, ideas, and examples so that we can be in solidarity with each other and not reinventing wheels.
Yeah, no, that's great. That's great. Great work. Super, super. Sassy, thank you so much. This is just what I wanted to hear, and I'm sure everybody else will get a lot from it as well. Thank you for your time. And if people want to find you, they can go to zebrasunite.coop and they can go
to sassycooperates.org. SASSY cooperates, no dashes, all lowercase, and .org. And that's my much needing to be revamped website. But that is the fastest way to get a hold of me. Either I'm always available to talk shop. I love this stuff. I reserve some amount of my time for P6 conversations, Principle 6, cooperation among co-opers. And so I reserve some of my time for that to talk shop. And if you or anybody else in your entity, in your organization, in your orbit need the kind of support, A, that's normal and okay. B, you can get it. And C, asking is half the battle. So I invite you all to ask for support because that's how we're actually going to do this together better.
Beautiful. What a pleasure. You're the best. Thanks so much.
Thank you.
Stay well, stay safe.
Yeah, indeed.